Hi, this is Craig Stocks, and this is my photo critique of the day. Today's photo was provided by Terry Rogers. So Terry, thank you for providing the image for us to look at. Picture appears to be at along the ocean at a seashore somewhere, and based on the kind of tall and narrow aspect ratio, I'm suspecting it may have been taken with a phone rather than with a DSLR type of camera. But that doesn't really matter. There's a couple things I like about the image. First of all, I like the sunset in the, I'm assuming it's a sunset. He's got some nice rays of color coming up from the horizon, and the photo looks like it was taken just shortly after sunset, so early in the civil twilight period. We've got a real nice color gradient going from orange kind of up to yellow here, further up in the sky, and then that's contrasted by what turned out to be gray, but probably appeared blue looking at it in person, with the waves coming in the foreground. I like the way there are layers of waves going across, and ends up with this wavefront just coming up onto the beach here in front of him. So interesting composition with the layers in the foreground and then the color gradient in the sunset in the background. A couple things I think could have made this a stronger image. First of all, something that catches my eye immediately is that the horizon is not level. So I think the first thing, when you're taking the picture, pay attention to be sure that you've got that horizon level, or if you're going to have the horizon at an angle, make sure that it looks like it was done purposefully and not just by accident. There's also a couple alternatives that you might consider in terms of either cropping or, when you're taking the picture, zooming in or out to change the way the image is framed. The horizon right now is pretty close to being in the center, which usually, general rule of thumb is you want the horizon either at the top third or the bottom third, depending on whether the sky or the foreground is more interesting. In this case, you could probably argue that there's somewhat equal interest, although I think to me there's more interest in the foreground. So that would indicate maybe crop more of the sky out so that there's more focus on the foreground, or in the case of taking the picture, zoom in a little bit. It looks like the horizon is still just cocked a little bit. So I think that stresses these layers in the foreground a little bit more. The other thing that you might look at, because we have this bright wave front at the bottom, that does tend to create an attraction for the bottom of the image, which is not really where we want the viewer to go. We want them to stay more in the center. And that would say maybe a crop more like this, so that we have a dark edge at the bottom, although that does get us back to close to a 50-50 split. To my eye, this does work a little bit better by having kind of a dark border element at the bottom. We still then have the layers going across the foreground, and then that kind of restores the color gradient across the top. And I've also cropped a little bit down from the top, again because we've got a couple of bright clouds which actually create dark spots at the top. And by cropping those out, that makes a sky look a little bit cleaner. But those are some things that you might have played with when you're taking the picture, or certainly that you can crop after the fact, working with the image on the computer. Going back to the original image, a lot of interesting elements in the image. Again, we've got the beautiful color gradient and the nice layers created by the waves coming in the foreground, making this an interesting image. So Terry, thank you for providing the image for us, and everybody have a great day.